All right, so let's talk a little bit about um passport bros. Weird weird kind of topic. Kind of comes from, I think, this theme where a lot of cis hetero males who are Western American guys are not really interested in some of the either qualities or mindsets or aspects of American women, and instead are looking for a traditional woman to have as a wife. And these guys who want a traditional woman are not having an easy time finding these traditional women in the US, and so they move to another country to try to find women that they can date and potentially marry that will want to live a traditional hetero lifestyle. Uh, for the purposes of this podcast, I mean, it's just it. Let's see where this goes. So I think when you're an LGBT person, you do know how to do a lot of code switching. You know how to be in the straight world, what is expected of you, what kind of gender norms and gender related things are expected of you, um, even if you're not going to follow them. um, you kind of just know, you know what I mean? um, Let me take for example, I've been to straight weddings, I've been to gay weddings. At gay weddings, I don't think the dress code is as obvious. People can wear what they're comfortable with wearing. Um, you know, Usually nobody's gonna like tell you if you're a woman don't wear a suit or something like that, or if you're a guy don't wear a dress. Like there's not really that kind of situation. A lot of LGBT weddings I've noticed kind of have like a theme. One that I went to was like a greaser theme, and so people were wearing like chucks and had their hair a certain way, or were wearing like cuffed blue jeans and like kind of that Fonzie look. Um, didn't matter if they were male or female. Like the wedding party had their own thing going on, but everybody else just kind of did their own thing. And I wore chinos, chucks, and a button down. Um, and I know other people wore just other things, you know. But it was nice. I was anxious. I remember being anxious, but it was nice. And then I've worn my own style clothes to other weddings where people were like maybe expecting me to wear a dress, and I was not going to. So um, I just showed up and wore what I wore. Like I wasn't dressed in like gym clothes or anything. Like it was nice. Like I had on like pants and a button down and stuff. Like it was my version of nice clothes. But anyways, um, I don't think there's anything really wrong with people wanting a traditional uh male female gender role kind of setting in their household, but there's another part of me that wonders, if there's like an aspect of oppression to it. Like one thing I know is, especially living in a city, in one of the world's biggest cities, the most known one of the most known cities, being raised and then coming back to that city, you know, there's a hustle culture. LA, Southern California, people hustle. Males and females. Like, I don't think people move here really to try to get a free ride or to live a traditional life. So I do think a lot of times when people are looking for those traditional roles, they might not be able to find it in like a major city. Because if you think of it, in a major city, unless you really have something kind of set up for yourself, a lot of people move to LA because they want to act, right? Or they want to be in entertainment. They want to be part of the biz. Content creators included, like it's a big content creator city. Um, a lot of people move out to LA. There's a lot of opportunity, and at least for collaboration and everything like that. Uh, but it's a very expensive city. So whereas you could probably live somewhere in like Ohio or Wyoming and spend like hardly any money on your rent, like nobody's gonna know about you. You're not, intermingling with all these other people, and just the setting alone, like most people aren't gonna want to necessarily like watch content from certain places unless they're like really into that. They kind of like the hype around certain other spots, which I don't know, whatever. Um, but I think that in major cities, a lot of times people come for the opportunities as well. A lot of people want to work or they are working. I don't know about education levels, but I feel like it helps to have a higher education level just because it gets you opportunities for certain jobs, um, that otherwise you might not be able to apply to, either education or experience. And so if you can't really figure out, what to do, like how to make things work, what's going to work for you, um I'm just purely wondering, how these guys think they're going to find those types of women. I'm not saying that there aren't traditional women in the US, but I guess we'd have to define what traditional means, because I feel like if there's a woman that's already educated and making a lot of money or has opportunity to do so, maybe she doesn't probably want to have kids too early, and if she does, you know somebody's going to have to take care of those kids. So if you have two working professionals, one's a doctor, one's a nurse, or one's an engineer, one's a nurse, one's a, you know I don't know, like two jobs that are high demand, and you're working at least a 40-hour work week, and you've gone at least to grad school through your master's. Most people who are like on track exactly with their age and everything, if they went through school exactly as scheduled, you graduate around 17, 18 years old from high school, you go to a 4-year university. So by the time you get out, you're like 21, 22 years old, and then you go to grad school. Let's say it only takes 2 years. You're 23 or 20, uh, you're 23 or 24 when you're ending grad school. Let's say you take a year to move up in your job, so you're about 25 or so. And then at that point, having kids. But most people I know, there's usually some years between. And so I would not necessarily say that most people have that as their as their main uh way of doing things, I feel like it's not usually like a one to one kind of ratio. Um, so I don't know. I think when it comes to traditional, I mean, I don't know, I'm not one to really speak to this, but I would say that my parents have a almost traditional way of looking at things. Like my dad has mostly been the one who's worked most of the time. Most of the time my mom would raise us from home. There were times when my mom worked outside of the house, at paid jobs when the family needed more money, but it was not necessarily um, out of always out of her desire or necessity to do it. So, I don't think she was ever too into wanting to work certain jobs. Um, I mean, she's talked about things like starting a store or a business and then other things. Um, Mostly, she kind of makes content online right now. Um, but my dad is the one, kind of providing the money for everything. He's not trying to retire. I don't think he cares to retire. He loves working. So, I don't think retirement is anywhere in his near future unless someone forces that to happen. I don't think he's trying to do that. And he pays for stuff, when it's big gifts, in our past for like holidays when we were kids, he would be the one that would buy the bigger gifts. Um, he would be the one that would kind of make most of the financial decisions, even though my mom is far better with money than my dad. It's usually my dad that is calling the shots. Are we sticking to the budget or not? You know, I know that the house that they have was meant to be an investment. As far as like how it gets paid off and all these things, like they're not really on the same page with it. My dad likes to travel and just blow money and spend money on things and take a lot of risks. My mom is more practical and budgets and likes to stick to a budget and think about the future. Um, I don't know. Um, yeah, my dad's always kind of been, in debt and owing money to people, borrowing money from people, and from banks and all those places. Like, that's kind of how he's used to doing things. Um, and worry about it later. So, I mean, I don't know. He seems regularly pretty short on cash and doesn't really think about paying into retirement and those kind of things. And I'm like, dude, you are like so old right now. You know, you kind of need to think of that stuff. But that's the dynamic. It's like one parent who isn't really doing a lot in a responsible way but makes a lot of money, and then the other parent who doesn't make a lot of money but is more financially responsible. So it's kind of like a weird thing. But usually, my dad knows how to cook, but usually my mom cooks. My mom is the one who is usually in touch with all the kids. Like, she knows what is up with all of us. My dad just takes a back seat to everything socially. He doesn't even see a need to catch up with people, you know. Like, one day my sister sent a text and, to the family, and I guess over lunch, it was a Saturday. I'm having lunch with my parents, and my mom asked my dad, like, or asked both of us, did you guys see the text that my sister sent? And I was like, yeah, you know. And then my dad was like, what was I supposed to like respond to that? And I'm just thinking, like, yes. Like, you know, but he's kind of like that. Like, he just, like, couldn't care less, you know? Like, he's like typical old man, like, doesn't really want to be like super involved with his kids. Like, he just kind of like is like minimally involved. Like, he'll talk about work and school and stuff like that, but if it doesn't have to do with like success and things like that, he kind of doesn't care less. He couldn't care less. He doesn't care if I'm going to a concert or going to the mountains or what I'm doing, you know. He'll care if I like sell a car or buy a car or something like that, but he won't care if I'm like renting a car to go snowboarding. You know, there's things like that where it's like he just doesn't care. Like, he doesn't take a lot of energy to like pay attention. Now, I'm not saying that that's how all traditional, you know, dads are or how all traditional moms are, but that's definitely more traditional than, you know, the newer generation of people who are married. And especially living in this city, most of my friends are, and it's probably just the social circles too, but most of my friends are very highly educated. I have a few friends that aren't, but they have really good work experience. They've worked at the same companies or types of companies for a very long time. Um, and um, yeah, that's kind of just how it's gone. Like, there's not really too much to actually say about some of this stuff. It's just like, what are you gonna do, you know? So I'm thinking when there's guys who want to look for a traditional woman, they're kind of looking for, you know, a woman that they can support, someone who's not maybe so, you know, tied up in their career, who wants to let the man be the breadwinner, and who wants to, you know, maybe have kids, stay home with the kids. Maybe like, I'm speculating here. Like, there's probably a lot of variation, but that looks a lot more traditional, you know. Um, Now I don't know why. Part of my mind asks, you know, why would a male prefer a woman to be a stay-at-home mom? Why would a male prefer to be the breadwinner and have a wife that's traditional, wants to stay home, cook, clean, kind of like the Cleaver family, and leave it to Beaver? Um, Dad's the businessman and the disciplinarian, and the mom is, you know, around the house all day, taking care of the household. Now, I'm not saying that taking care of a household isn't a lot of work, because even me, just myself, you know, having a room and just trying to like keep it in enough order, you know, dusting, if there's maybe cobwebs developing in places, and like, you know, it takes time and effort to maintain it. Like, I'd say if I let it go for like 2 weeks, maybe, I don't know. I don't know how long it takes for things to get dusty, but I'd say probably within two, if I don't clean like the bathroom or something for like 2 weeks, I'll definitely notice. So cleaning at least once a week helps. I'd say once a week per room, just to avoid the griminess and just natural dirt that develops. Because with dust, you don't even have to be doing anything and things get dusty. So I would say, you know, for someone to actually keep a house dusted and in good order and swept, you know, the more rooms you have, like if you do have like a two-story house with like four bedrooms or whatever, one's a guest room or whatever, and like a kitchen, bathroom, staircase, a den, or a family room and a living room, all those things. I mean, a couple bathrooms. That is gonna take most of the week to keep it clean. If you're cleaning every room, like maybe once a day you're cleaning a room, or cleaning one or two rooms every day, it's going to take you every day to be doing some cleaning. And so, and then if you count errands, leaving the house to go get groceries, coming back home, if you actually do cook food and stuff like that, like what I'm trying to say is it takes a lot. It takes a lot of effort to keep a house clean as well as raising the kids. Um, and depending how young they are, if they don't go to school yet, somebody's going to be home with the kid all the time until they have a few hours at least where they're in preschool or kindergarten or whatever, and somebody still has to take them there and pick them up and bathe them and clean them and give them naps and give them food and play with them and all kinds of things. Um, and so that takes a lot of effort. So I could kind of understand to that extent how maybe guys might want that structure. Like maybe it's the structure that they're looking for. I don't want to say that it's like the aspect of oppression because I think a lot of women who, I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to like raise your family and live a traditional life, being a homemaker. Um, I think it's a lot of hard work. I do think it's a lot of hard work and it's admirable work. Um, I liked having my mom home. Like that was nice. Um, it was like there's always somebody who's relatively available. It's like if you need something, she could take you to the store to like get the arts and crafts supplies you need for your school project, or like take you and your friends to go to the movies, or you know cook meals that you like. We we would eat out as a family like on weekends, but we're a big like cook at home, like eat breakfast at home. Usually we would take lunch to school. Um, we wouldn't often buy it. Sometimes we would, sometimes we wouldn't. It would just depend. And then we would have snacks and lunch and stuff like that at school. So we usually had like kind of enough to eat, and you know, um, unless you like forgot your lunch or something or your homework or whatever. Like sometimes when my mom was available, she could bring it to the school. Um, Especially when we lived a lot closer. And we, yeah, we had a pretty, um, I think we had a pretty okay time. Uh, but when I start to think about, what, um, what an LGBT couple would be doing, I don't really think the same rules apply. Like, I've never really heard that many LGBT people saying, I want a traditional, like, gender role relationship. Some people do. I've heard a lot of like mask females saying stuff like I'm daddy, stuff like that. Like, and some people like to have that role. Just I think it's just some people's nature. It doesn't really matter if you're like a man or a woman. I think some people's nature is they are kind of more on the side where they want to be not in control, like the authority necessarily. Because I feel like there's like this fine line between like wanting to be the person who provides, wanting to be the person who's kind of like in charge of stuff, but then you can still be that way and be nice and be humble and be, you can still have masculine qualities and still be there for your family and be there for your partner and not be like um just completely like controlling and abusive and things like that. Like you don't have to go that route. Um it doesn't have to be like that level, but I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't have to be that level, but it could be, it kind of could be a level. Um, you could be trying to, um, it kind of depends on the person's motives, I would say. Now, I wouldn't think that most cis straight men who are trying to find these traditional women, I wouldn't assume that they're all like trying to take some abusive role. Um, I mean, I have a really hard time believing that most guys are kind of like, you know, out for themselves and don't really care about families or, which is kind of an interesting thing because it's like I feel like there is becoming this kind of pushback of guys wanting families, guys wanting to be able to date women, um, and kind of have this um balance to things. Like I feel like it's hard to kind of challenge these like masculine roles, these stereotypical masculine roles. I think a lot of guys have a hard time with that. Like they kind of feel maybe more secure with things being like exactly as they have been for a while. Um because that's how they're taught to be. They're never taught to be any other way. Women, on the other hand, I think the roles of women have changed over time where women are, were initially told, hey, you need to be this way to find a man, and that's how you're going to get taken care of is be available to men for them to find you attractive and want you so that you can be supported and have kids together and then, he'll support you and your kids. Versus now, it's like, well, women can be independent too, so they don't necessarily need a man. So a lot of the women, I think, have found some kind of value in having their own money, their own freedom, and I think a lot of guys haven't really caught on to that I think if guys were put in another role where they were told, hey, like, you know, like you need to be a certain way, like I don't know, I think when women now that women are starting to have money and success, their ideas are changing about the kind of guy that they want, the ones who are dating men. And but the interesting thing is I don't really see it so much in LGBT culture. I don't really see women seeking out other women for traditional reasons. Like that's not really been something that I've heard in like a lot of conversations. There's so much variety, so I just don't know. I don't really know if that concept really exists um, on all ends. I really do think it's a cis straight male thing. I think that there's something about a lot of them that kind of want things to stay kind of the way things have traditionally been. Some of them really, you know, like that because they have a role and they can tell that, like, hey, they're winning if they're doing all these things. Like, how does someone, you know, uh, measure their success if they've got a wife that is making equal or more money than they are, I think there's a lot of guys that can't really like wrap their head around that, where it's like you don't have to be the one who's doing these things. Like maybe you want to be, but you don't have to be. And I don't know, like it's just kind of weird food for thought. I don't really know where I'm going with this. It doesn't really apply to my life, but interesting topic. Interesting topic. I just haven't really seen it. Um, I don't know if anybody else has. I mean, I haven't really been getting out that much either, but I haven't really seen it. So I don't know, for whatever that's worth. Uh, I kind of wonder. But all right, well, with that, thanks for listening.